Whew. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you watched earlier today at the 8 a.m., you saw a show. And then you saw that the show was no more. And the show is no more, not because of anything I said, but because of the audio. So what happened was, I did do my usual audio checks. What you do is you're recording. And somehow between my audio check and going live, there was some setting that I didn't know about, or what has to do with, apparently I don't know how it is that somehow I ended up with 2 iterations of my microphone in the OBS settings. It has to do with mic aux, and then I added a thing called microphone. Now, I never had this problem before in any of my shows, even with this new setup. I've had it for a while, so my only theory is that perhaps there was a mute button somewhere. There must have been a mute on one of the things that I must have, probably didn't even hit, knowing that I hit it. So the whole show was in echo, so I canceled it, and I am redoing the entire show right now because I love you, the people, so much that I won't deliver a piece of crap like that. I won't deliver a piece of audio crap. I'd rather redo the whole freaking thing, and that's what we're doing. I'm redoing the whole thing, and I have no problem. If you watch any part of that show, you didn't watch any of it, so you will not be listening to anything that you actually saw. Maybe a small part, but it'll just be a small part. With that, this is what the show is today. This is going to be probably a shorter version of what I created earlier, but I'll get the essentials in. Chicken Drone, Utopia, and You. This is for Friday, May 29th, 2020. On this episode, we're going to have drone-killing laser passes U.S. Navy tests. The irrationality of the magnitude of loss gets scientific. The stateless vulnerability in the times of Coronavilles, a Rojava focus. The better-than-gas electric option is coming, and finally, Tibetan chickens and the genetic plastic of ancestral homes. Let's just make sure that we are on all of the interest there. I do see Micro Furball just followed me on D Live, and I appreciate the follow, Micro Furball. And if you can see this audio, hear this audio, let me know. And if you're on D Live at some point during this audio, during this, even if in the beginning you hear audio, at some point you won't. I think, especially if you're listening on desktop, my theory goes. But you will hear the audio in replay. But if you have an issue in the comments there in the D Live, I have access to the YouTube Action Batsa live stream, and that hasn't had any audio issues like the D Live thing had. So you can go over to the YouTubes and see for yourself. So with that in mind, why don't we get ready to record the first segment of the show after we do what we always do, and that is, Let's just prep the ground here.
Warning, the material you're about to be exposed to is one of the minds of individuals who are limited in their capacity to understand the actual reality of power around them, just as you and everyone else alive currently are. What you're about to hear are opinions, suppositions, like gospel or scientific truths, not infallible certainties. Brace yourself for incoming opinions that could confirm or deny your preferential view of the reality of power. Brace yourself for fallible material, fallible opinions, as values reflected, but nonetheless variable and firmly held. We do not apologize to anyone. But we do not apologize for daring to express our views and impressions upon what we believe is and what we hope to see. We will keep talking so long as we are able.
And now, Frico attempts to talk about the news without freaking out.
You know, that is the general plan, ladies and gentlemen. I strive to not freak out. And if I do that, I get to 16 shows. Now, the bummer is that I already did this show. But because of the bad audio, I'm redoing it. So so it's going to be harder to get through the one segment that was difficult. It wasn't too difficult, but it was difficult enough. But now I have this agitation in me, in myself. Now, I don't necessarily fully blame myself in this. Well, I do. Never mind. I have to do things now. Now I have to do more steps to assure the audio does not fail me, or else. So with that in mind, let's get to the first segment, which is going to be our top headlines. And we're going to start recording in 3, 2, 1. This is the talk headlines for Frico Talks and News on Friday, May 29th, 2020. And on this talk headline, we're going to be talking about drone-killing laser passes U.S. Navy test. All right. See, I did a whole skit for this thing, and I don't know, do I try to reenact the whole skit, or do I do something else? I don't know. We'll see. So here's an excerpt from Stripes.com. Navy warship uses a new high-tech energy laser to shoot down drone in mid-flight. In mid-flight, baby. In mid-flight. I mean, how else do you shoot down a drone? I didn't catch that the first time I did this. How else do you shoot down a drone other than in mid-flight? The key word being down. You could shoot a drone, and then the question is, was it in mid-flight? But when you say shoot down a drone, the mid-flight, it's not even needed. It's not even. And why? Why is it mid-flight? Why is it always mid-flight? Why not just in flight? Caught it in flight. I mean, you did say you downed it, so that's implied. Never mind. It's a picayune affair, sir. It's a picayune affair. That's just, by the way, this is from Stripes.com. You'll see there's some weird things about this article. I don't know about the human who designed this article, if they were constructed in a manner that caused them to intentionally fulfill the parameters that they do in this article, or if they're just following orders. It's weird. You'll see. I mean, nothing sinister. I don't mean just weird, not sinister. The USS Portland, of course not. We're talking about the military. Go military. Something. The USS Portland successfully disabled an unmanned aerial vehicle in mid-flight during the test of a new high-energy laser weapon system. This is what I keyed on before, and this is worth noting. And I believe I have it noted. If I don't, okay, this high-energy laser weapon system. Okay, you see high-energy laser. You know what? I'm doing the bit. I'm doing it. I can't leave this hanging. Let me switch over to where we got this. Hold on. And I know what's going to happen here. We're going to go with this. Yeah. Up. Hold on. Okay, we're just going to go with that. Look at that. Where is it? This is beauty personified. High energy weapons system. See that? That is how this should be. So what they have done is they put that in quotes. They quotified it. They hemmed it in. They hemmed in the glory of high energy laser weapon system with quotes. They don't need no quotes. They don't need no quotes. They turned this glorious, powerful element of awesome into a theoretical meh. Come on, man. Why'd you do that? Why did you do that? And they did this on May 16th, by the way, according to the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Video footage released by the Navy on Friday shows the amphibious transport dock ship firing a laser weapon system demonstrator. You don't put any quotes in there. Not that you should. You should not. But see, this is, you were afraid of this, weren't you, writer person? You were afraid of the awesome in that phrase, high energy laser weapon system. So you had to quote it because it was too scary. Like you put the monster in the closet in your bedroom. You don't want it under the bed. This is the monsters under the bed if you take the quotes away. But I like the monster under the bed. Me and the monster under the bed get along just fine. As a matter of fact, the monster under the bed helped plan this show. So thank you, monster under the bed. Video footage released by the Navy on Friday shows the amphibious transport dock ship firing a laser weapon system demonstrator. I read this again because no quotes, and gloriously so. And we're just going to not do this follow-up, though. We don't need that. Somewhere in the Pacific. A separate clip shows the drone being shot down. The test marks the first system-level implementation of a high-energy class solid-state laser, the system said. The technology allows the Portland to redefine war at sea for the Navy, said the ship's commander, Captain Gary Sanders. I don't know. See, the last time when I did this, I zeroed in on this too, the Portland, and I should probably do this. I think I should. So they have the Portland, and this is another odd thing. You have this awesome thing that sounds awesome, and then you turn it into the lowercase Portland. All right. We're gonna fix it. Hold on. You will thank me. There you go. Now you take in that. Look at that, and then there you go. High energy laser weapon system. The Portland. The Portland. That's the name of your movie. The Portland. There it is. There it is, folks. That's how you sell. That's how you sell right there. See this when you put this quote, when you put the quote around high energy laser weapon system, you are defanging it. You are declaring it meh. Don't ever do that. You're writing for stripes.com. Send forth the heroic message of defensive tech. Awesome defensive tech that should render nation states help. Well, whatever. There you go. Here's your shot right there. There you go. High energy laser weapon system. That's the only reason I really even have this show on here. Now, as you guys know, with the text thingies that have been watching, I'm going to leave this little artifact up from the show on, well, only on the main screen here. We won't bother here, but I'm going to leave that artifact up. And when I do the show tomorrow or Monday, then, well, we'll see if it survives the next article. Does it survive the next article? It's not very likely. It's not very likely that it will. And with that note, that is the end of this top headline. Coming up next is going to be our dialectical. Now, you want to strap it in and brace for maybe a longer production. In the original recording, this was about 25 minutes long. I am willing to bet this will probably end up being 15 minutes now. Because you know. But still, good. It's going to be an awesome 15 minutes, I assure you. And the dialectical is the irrationality of the magnitude of loss gets scientific. I should say scientificable, because it is more like that than what they... Well, I'll save that for later. Well, I've transitioned over to the next scene here, and then I've done that rather nicely, and I'm very proud of myself in that transition. Let us hope that everything is going right. And what I've decided I'm also going to do with the transition is just going to take a peek at the universe and see if there's anything going on in the where are we at here? What's going on here? Hold on one second. Just checking some stuff out here. Got to operate under the assumptions. Where are we at? Going to my Frico Talks, the news site, and I'm trying to get the video to show that the video is running. I do not see it, so I am not even sure if we're running on the Facebook page. But I do see us running rather nicely on the YouTube page. Hello there, anyone watching there on the YouTube lands. This is Frico, Frico.com. Looks like that checks. And then we go to the D-Lives, and it looks like the D-Lives checks now. I'm not going to check the audio, and I'm assuming at some point the audio stops working on D-Live, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why. All right, let's get ready then for the next scene. And we're going to start recording in 3, 2, 1. This is the dialectical for Frico Talks the News on Friday, May 29th, 2020. My name is Frico with Frico.com, and our dialectical today is the irrationality of the magnitude of loss gets scientific. Within the frameworks of logic, the illogical may seem illogical. But outside of that framework, the illogical is, in fact, the logical flow. I'm just going to let that float, let that float above the ethers, and let's see if in the end you find, oh, I get it. I get what you're saying. Maybe you already get it. Maybe you already thought it, and you're like 15 million degrees ahead of me in my thoughts, and you're like, so cute. Look at the little guy with his little thinking. That's wonderful. What are you, 12? Okay, all that being said, you didn't have to hurt my feelings there. That was kind of mean. Even if it's true, it's kind of mean. Come on, I don't need to know that. Here's an excerpt from RealClearScience.com. Science behind irrationality just passed a huge test. I'm just pausing because I want to make sure that you take in the scenario. And I just want to see how you react to this. If you won $100 tomorrow, you'd be pretty happy. And if you lost $100, you'd be less than thrilled. But those two feelings wouldn't be the same in magnitude. The loss would probably sting far more than the gain would delight. Pause. Let that set in. People don't approach things like loss and risk as purely rational agents. There you go. Purely rational agents. Let's see if we've got that covered. We may have that covered. Let's see. Hold on. It's worth a trip into the abyss. Yeah, we got this covered. All right, yes. This is from the recording from the last time, but there it is. I just think that you need to just note. Purely rational agents. People don't approach things. You see that? We just don't approach things as purely rational agents. Purely rational agents. Purely rational agents. We weigh losses more heavily than gains. We feel like the difference between 1% and 2% is bigger than the difference between 50% and 51%. Now, right here, folks, this should be a clue that we have a problem. This is a basic understanding of perspectives, ratios, context, comparisons, a number of factors. That would totally make sense as far as how you would view the difference between 1% and 2%. You're doubling your loss or gain. But 50 and 51, your potential value, gain or loss, relative to what you have, or what you potentially could have, whatever context this is much less significant. This is not a rational thought. It's not about percentages. It's about percentage only tells one. It's only one tiny little slice of the elephant, so to speak. But they can't get around that. In general, one of the fundamental problems with a lot of science of today is how many of its starting assumptions reduce their construct of the human to very, very simplistic, basic elements. And I think you're seeing it here. This observation of our irrationality is one of the most influential concepts in behavioral science. There you go. See that? See that right there? And behavioral science is one of the institutions that is producing many of the frameworks that justify a lot of the institutions that we see today that educate our children, for instance. It's based upon, I want you to that point should be driven home. So this is very important that we're looking at, when we're looking at the experts, this is a very rooted assumption. Just keep looking at that purely rational agents. Just think about all the connotations of that assumption. They're studying the phenomenon of our incapacity to be purely rational agents. By the way, which also belies another question, which is, seems to assume that maybe we should be, humans should be. I don't know who on whose authority do you even assume that humans should be anything. But anyway, that's another story. Skyscrapers of research have been built on Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's foundational 1979 paper that first described the paradoxes of how people make decisions when faced with uncertainty. You see that? Skyscrapers of research, dudes and dudettes and everyone else. Dudes. Skyscrapers of research. Just stunning and brave. Skyscrapers of research. Purely rational agents. So when researchers raised questions about the foundations of those skyscrapers, it caused alarm. A large team of researchers set out to check whether the results of Kahneman and Tversky's crucial paper would replicate if the same experiments were conducted now. And you get a clip notes here. There are 4,000 participants, 19 countries, and essentially they came to the same conclusions. And I'm going to go over their questions in a bit here. I'm going to skip over it because I go over it in a little bit. Well, you'll see. The questions were the same as those as used in the other. And so basically, after they did these questions, they're like, oh, man, here's the science that shows that this irrationality is legit. It doesn't make sense, but yet here it is. Here it is. This is how human beings think. We don't understand this irrationality, but then that's the thing. We don't understand this irrationality. Purely rational agents. I'm going to leave that up still. Still carrying the day. So here are the two questions and the assumptions of illogic. This is where I will cover in trying to really strip it down for you. The first part. You have two scenarios. 80% chance of getting $4,000. This is gain. This is gain of value that you do not have. Guarantee of $3,000. This means that you get 75% of what you could possibly get. However, I'm sure you understand that means that there's a 20% chance you get nothing. Significant majority, it doesn't give the exact numbers, significant majority choose guaranteed 3,000. And the difference between the study of then and the study of today is the study of today did show the difference wasn't as extreme, and they put that off to some degree through the fact that they used a lot larger sampling than this other group did, and there's probably some credibility to that. So they want the guarantee, the $3,000. Yet I'd rather take that $3,000 gain than risk winning 25% more, but losing it all at those odds. Then the next one, this is the question, and this is what they assumed is the contrast. 80% chance of losing $4,000 and a guarantee of losing $3,000. So you have a chance, an 80% chance of losing $4,000. Now this is losing what you have. This isn't gain, this is losing what you have. 80% chance that you could theoretically lose $4,000. But you could choose a guarantee of losing $3,000. And if you take that route, you protect yourself 25%. 25% less loss. In this instance, significant majorities choose to take the chance of going for the $4,000 to potentially not lose anything. So in this instance, they're willing to take a 20% chance on not having to pay anything, risking paying 25% more than they would have otherwise. And in the other instance, they're not willing to take an 80% chance of winning $4,000, which is 25% more than $3,000. And for them, they believe that this is just a fundamental reflection of the mystery and illogic of the human. They just can't seem to understand this. And whole institutions have been built around this lack of understanding of why it is that human beings are not purely rational agents. The contrast assumed is, in one instance, rejecting chance and potential higher reward for secure lower gain, while in the other rejecting certainty for the chance of losing nothing, even if that chance is only 20% and the loss increases your loss by 25%. And the contrast assumed is rejecting chance on one circumstance while embracing it in another, in instances that both involve values of relatively the same amounts as potential increase or decrease in value, but also contradict. Also, in one instance, you reject an 80% chance to make more money rather than risk losing a potential gain. We think of gain as well anyway, and on the other instance, willing to take a risk of only 20%. And risking losing more. We're willing to risk losing more for less of a chance in relative value potential differences, the 25% differences, than we are in taking a chance to gain more when we're offered an assurance of gaining more. I think the reason, well, anyway, I'll let my writing speak for it. Because so often I have found, I'm trying not to do on my show where I say something and then, I did think of it. Because I don't remember when you write a lot in general, but even if you don't write a lot, it's often difficult to remember exactly what you wrote. It is, in my opinion, not a contradiction, but a failure by the observer to understand that the underlying aversion is in conceding what one holds. A guaranteed gain is a de facto possession in hand. A guaranteed loss is a guaranteed loss. A potential gain is a bird in the bush, while a potential loss is a hope to hold on to what one currently holds. There's no logic in the process if one shifts the focal point of the commonality in these questions from the chance versus certainty to the holding versus potentially holding value. To me, this whole struggle with understanding the scientific illogic of our reasoning reveals more about the fallible nature of humans pursuing understanding in general, specifically with our very fundamental institutions of understanding what is the scientific method. In this case, the ones doing the observing have assumed the fundamental evidence of illogic was in how humans seem to inconsistently choose chance or certainty when it comes to a potential loss or gain of comparable value. The starting question: why are humans illogical when it comes to chance? Immediately colored the types of data searches the scientists would engage in, the types of tests that would be created, etc., so that decades later they have yet surprised themselves to learn that this illogical tendency may be illogical, but the science shows it is consistently reflective of the overwhelming aggregate of humans. Logic itself, my friends, is limited in its utility by the degree to which it is emerged from the framework of preference it is designed to serve. I'll put it to you this way. Within the framework of a football playing preference, there is definitely logic to the football plays that are designed, especially when they operate within football rules. Those football rules, in a manner of speaking, are the frameworks of preference. This is the type of game, ostensibly, that we would like to see played. And so within those frameworks of preference, the strategies emerge, the logic emerges. But if you were to take that football play and try to run it on a baseball field, that would be totally illogical. That system would be completely illogical within a baseball playing perspective. It would totally break the whole system. It would be a meltdown. That's the problem that I believe that scientists do not understand, because scientists are still, like, using in the sense of how Max Stirner used the term. He's a mid-19th century philosopher. Egoism was what and egoism is a big part of I'm not an egoist, but certainly I was influenced by egoism in a lot of ways, fundamentally. But Stirner used the word spook to describe a dependence upon some sort of assumption of universal value, basically. And scientists have assumptions of universal value which aren't based in the scientific method. The scientific method itself, there's nothing wrong with the scientific method. The problem with the scientific method is not the beginning and end. The scientific method is a tool to measure data, in essence. And the tool is only as useful as the individual. The tool will measure what you tell it to measure, and within the context that you tell it to measure it, but it doesn't necessarily point you to truth. It points you to some degree of understanding within the constructs that you wish to place truth. This is what scientists don't understand. But they have to come to terms with the fact that they don't own the certainty of why and how scientific methods should even be applied in the first place. And I would argue in this instance that they've enabled that it is a convenient vehicle of power for the state and for corpo states to have their scientists be fundamentally rooted in such assumptions about the natures of humanity. You would want and need to believe when you're part of systems, when most of these scientists derive their incomes from corporations or states. So the scientists, not necessarily, just because you're a scientist receiving money from a corporation or state, I don't want to broadly brushstroke anyone, but in general, those type of structures, the institutions that emerge from those types of needs, the needs of states and corporate institutions, will favor scientists who naturally in and of themselves are predilected to assume this whole purely rational agent's flaws in the human, the necessity for centrally organized and engineered systems to protect humanity from its own dangerous irrationality. That's essentially why I believe science is so prevalent with this type of thinking, and why in 1979 they came upon this quote-unquote problem and didn't recognize that within frameworks of preference. It would make sense to me within frameworks of preference of why it is that human beings would be willing to take much less of a risk to gain to only gain 25% more of what you don't have, as opposed to much more of a risk to hold on to what you have, again within the comparisons of a 25% loss or gain. It's we associate, and I believe usefully so, what we have on the main with time, energy, labor, memory, investment, ownership. They don't, and I wish the word is really a myth. We really don't own anything, but it's what we sense. It's really stewardship is what I would argue, but still ownership is our sense. We have that powerful, compelling sense of ownership. It's quite easy to understand within a framework of preference, an ownership preference. The human beings would absolutely, it would be more logical for human beings that are more root. Now, not all human beings, by the way, are root. I don't believe that this sense of ownership is, for some, it's more or less prevailing, and I think in general it's more prevailing. I think all of us have some sense of the ownership impulse within us, but on the main, I think that probably a lot less. Well, there's a lot more variety in this issue than a lot of other issues. There's the aggregate for the ownership is probably less and less dramatic, but still prevailingly, it would make sense to me, such as I understand humanity, that more humans, based on this impulse, this preference, this is absolutely the logically right choice. But for the scientists, I think the scientists are still looking and hoping for the noble beast paradigm that they get to define everything within. That's why, well, I won't get into the whole behavior. I love behavioral evolution. And there's so many cool things that I've gotten out of it. But yet, so many of these folks, I'm not going to name names right now, but certainly one of the more prevailing ones. Nope, don't say the name, because I now remember the name. They're so brilliant in so many ways, and they're looking at things in many new ways, and then they always just still seem to consistently take it back in one way, shape, or form, even though they would totally deny it, to this noble creature of finding, making sure that they assign value to human action. They assign implied value to human action, even in their scientific studies. The implied universal values are all over the place if you listen to these folks, and that's the problem. Until they get the universal value assumptions out of their schools and their institutions and their labs, they will continue to more or less be the tools of the state and the corporation that rely on certaintarians who can deliver them the continued justification for the centralization of the definition of good human, the necessity for destroying life that might prevent the collective, the whole, from achieving the good human status. That's essentially why you keep seeing this. And there are plenty of scientists who understand that this is all bunk and idiocy. And they understand the whole context of logic. Logic in and of itself doesn't tell you anything. It only tells you something within your frameworks of preference. They understand that, but those are not the ones that are going to end up getting the best grants and the best leadership positions in those institutions that primarily rely on state and corporate dollars for their very existence. I think I'll end this segment at that. And as it turns out, last segment was 5 minutes, and this one's 23, so there you go. This is the end of the Dialectical. Coming up next is the Talk Focus, which is the last segment of the first half of the show. And the Talk Focus is the stateless vulnerability in the times of Coronavilles, a Rojava focus. All right, and then I'm going to try to make it a habit here, because eventually I will get chatters, people talking to me, hopefully. And so I will eventually have to. So when I start to get traffics and people's watching the live shows, I will be then... I'm not going to try to respond to comments during the live stream show, but I will respond to them during this time now. I am not sure why I did not end up with this thing going out to Facebook for some reason. So no idea why that didn't happen, but there you have it. But it did go. It is going out on YouTube. No comments on anything. And that's not a surprise. I don't expect comments. I'm just trying to get into the habit of it, because I think probably within the next 2 to 4 weeks, I'll probably start to build up 2, 3, 4, 5 regular, maybe live listeners. A couple people start to respond. So I'm getting prepared, because I'm starting to see some things that showing me maybe. I got a couple more followers, and across the board on all of my platforms. I'm getting a couple more followers, subscribers, the numbers growing a little bit here and there. So seeing some action, seeing some positive flow. So far, I feel good about this. I feel, obviously, I'm hoping for some sort of miraculous one of these videos goes viral and it's like, wow, can you believe he said this? Blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly everybody's talking about me, and Tim Pool wants me on his show, and yeah, all of a sudden. But that's not going to be. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be a long grind. So long as I continue to see the slow improvements, such as I'm seeing them, I'm going to continue to do this grind. I would say, my goal is basically I need to see some improvements by the end of June, but I'm already to the point now where I'm pretty much like, I'm probably, all things being equal, going to do this at least a year. Give it at least a year of the slow monkey grind. And if you're with me right now early on, and I'm going to say I got one person that does regularly watch my shows outside of my close family kin, and that's Larry. Larry! Shout out to Larry if you're watching. And I don't know, you only watch on Facebook, and I don't know if you can even see this on Facebook. But if somehow you see this replay, Larry, shout out to Larry. Larry watched my show, and I appreciate your time. All right, with that, let's get recording the top focus so I can go on my second break of the day. You know how much I love you folks, man. That I recorded the show, and then I realized that I got that audio thing, and I said, you know what? They deserve better. I delete that stuff. I'm like, no. I will do the whole show over for you, the people. That's who I am. That's who Frico is. All right, let's get this recorded in 3, 2, 1. And this is the talk focus for Frico Talks the News on Friday, May 29th, 2020. Yes, I am Frico with Frico.com. Our focus for today is the stateless vulnerability in the times of Coronavilles, a Rojava focus. So the Kurds, as well as many folks from around the world, have formed a confederal union variously referred to by numerous names, but mostly identified even among the people that comprise this union as Rojava. An experiment which I think just basically means north in Kurdish, something like that, I believe. An experiment in the form of stateless governance, trapped between competing coercive enterprises, including the United States, Russia, Turkey, Israel, Syria, and Iran, to name some of the major players, but by far not all. These people, struggling through various impediments on their capacity to prove for themselves by the coercive violent actions of the legitimate powers fighting for the interest in Syria, have somehow managed to continue to thrive and grow in their experiment, but now, in the midst of the latest Turkish assault on their lands, Coronavilles has strolled into the land, and the rest of the world seems to have largely forgotten what might befall this land, whose people have caused such fear and hate to stir in their coercive enterprise neighbors. So this is Öcalan. Yeah. Öcalan, there we go. So they are basically, this is basically their theoretical leader. Their ideational leader is what I would call him. Abdullah Öcalan. So he started off as more or less kind of a Marxist, nationalist Marxist kind of guy, and he essentially rejected Marxism, communism, state centralized social engineering in general, but not that he's against social engineering. He's just for for I will say consensual social engineering, if you will. So he is, I would consider him a disciple of Murray Bookchin, whose municipalist ideas, not that I agree with all of his ideas, but certainly I would say municipalism comes as close as any political theory to describing what I'd be willing to do as regarding political theory. Now, in general, I'm not for political theories or economic theories for that matter. I'm about power. I'm about putting the power in individuals and associations' hands and seeing what political theories and economic theories emerge from that. And they'll be political, they'll be consensual models. And they'll be varied, I'm sure. Plenty of variations. I'm willing to bet we have no idea the complex variations that humans might be able to express regarding human action in consensual matters. So, yeah, he has a bit of a, as I say, his leadership style is often ruthless, and many of his he is a pretty ruthless guy, and then he kind of changed, and he took a lot of Murray Bookchin's ideas and expanded it, and this whole thing is basically an experiment in this quasi-statelessness, if you will, and they exist in this world between state and non-state. You call it anarchy, but for you, anarchy is a negative term. For me, it's not. For you, anarchy is what's going on in Minneapolis. For me, anarchy is peaceful exchange that doesn't involve coercion, cooperation, deception, whatever. Yes, cooperation, the way that I use the word cooperation, I view it as polite coercion. And I've talked in other shows about why that is. There'll be other shows where I'll share it again, but not this one right now. So, these people are basically, they're originally mostly the Kurds, but they've come to embrace anybody that shows up. So it might be 70-80% Kurds, and the rest is a whole bunch of other folks, including a lot of Arabs from different nation states. There's Jews, there's Arabs, there's many folks from America of multiple ethnicities. African Americans are there. There are all kinds of folks that are becoming Rojavans. And Rojava is a nation that's beginning to form. And I don't mean the state aspect, I mean the nation as in a people with shared customs and values. And it is as close as anything on the earth to approaching attempts to develop, well, not even develop, to create the conditions for consensual institutions to emerge from. That's is more or less how they think. So I'm in par with them in a lot of ways. Now I have differences, and they place. By the way, they're SJWs, big time SJWs, and they're consensual SJWs. They have opportunities for individuals, not coerced commandments. So individuals can choose to be part of going through their schooling. They have schooling to learn how they're very feminist, and like some of the, I'm not a feminist. I don't necessarily have anything against feminism in and of itself. I'm just not a feminist. But their notion of feminism is very co-equalities, not, they don't really diminish maleness, they don't diminish masculinity per se. There's co-equality in the truest sense of the term, and they're policing. They have a male and a female officer that serve together. All of their leadership positions, there's a male and a female. Now I think it should be expanded to be male, female, and a third one. That way we have some, I think I said this in the last recording of this show that ended up getting deleted because of the audio, that there are the they elements that we're coming to understand about humanity. Well, we've always known the they element was there, we just never really wanted to face it. So the they element, so it allows for the theys. I just don't think that, I wouldn't want to have a condition as like we want to have a male, female, and a they, because I think the theys are, I don't think that it's a significant enough portion that it should be available. Because you got male, female, where does a they fit that wants to be in leadership? We need to make sure we have a slot available for them. And all things being equal, I think if you see conditions in which you see a person that might fit into that they category, that you might want to, oh, well, here's an opportunity that we can have that multiplicity of voice, but not to just pick a they, because we have so few of them that you're drawing from a smaller talent pool, frankly. So wouldn't want to make that mandatory and end up with people who really are not all that capable of being in leadership positions. It would end up doing far more harm. Like in the case of, like you have two perspectives here. You have the Navy, what is he, a Navy admiral that's I forget his name, and he's, now maybe he's not gay, but for all the world, even if he's not gay, he's pretty much representing gay. He sounds extremely gay when he talks. Hello, he talks like this, very effeminate, but what he is doing is even though he has a very, what we call effeminate, that's our construct, so we associate that type of voice with femininity, which we associate with weakness, or there are reasons for that. But this gentleman, using this voice, he speaks with authority and command and certainty and confidence, and it sounds like he knows what he's doing. He is basically, what he is doing is far more powerful than any hate speech laws. He is living in one instance, he's the cliched gay man, but he's the cliched gay man who's now attaching to that image that we associate with weakness, with non-gravitas. We're now associating that image with gravitas. So when we hear someone like this talking, we're not immediately placing them in a reduced role. You can talk like this and be the President of the United States and be a badass mother. talking like this, see? And then you have the idiot transgender woman that I think that she's largely there because she's transgender. She's not qualified. And I will say she's not qualified just because she acts and sounds like a freaking moron. The health secretary lady in Pennsylvania, and for all the folks that are just looking for a reason to continue to not have to face this aspect of human reality, that we have people that fall into this transgender category, she's really making it easy for a lot of people to say, see, look at this. This is what they say this transgender. Yeah. Navy Admiral guy kicking butt. Yeah. She's not doing so well. So anyway, that long tirade to say to the Rojavans, if you go down this road, and you should consider the they factor, and I think move it from 2 to 3 to allow for the they, but not mandatorialize as they for that reason. So there you go. I think that's. I don't know if I say anything more than that. Well, why don't I actually read the excerpt? How about I do that? What you don't want to read the actual excerpt? I kind of got lost in my thought. You do that. And that's part of the show, by the way. That's part of the excellence, that I allow that. That's part of the show. I give that to you. It's part of the joy. That's the art. Rojava. This is from opendemocracy.net. Statelessness in a time of pandemic. Open democracy. The autonomous administration of North and East Syria, commonly known as Rojava, has illuminated the plight of the stateless, even though statelessness in Rojava's case defies the narrow definition of international law. Despite comprising almost a third of Syrian territory, Rojava has not been recognized as a legitimate body politic neither by the Syrian state nor by the international community. The limitations that come with this lack of recognition may have disastrous consequences during the Coronavilles pandemic. Rojava faces dire humanitarian conditions caused by years of war against ISIS and further aggravated by the recent Turkish invasion in October 2019. 600,000 IDPs and refugees, largely a product of 2 occupations by Turkey, live in camps across the region where access to water is limited and social distancing is all but impossible. In addition, there are tens of thousands of ISIS prisoners and their families guarded in camps and prisons by the local administration. Since their countries of origin have been unwilling to repatriate them or to put them on trial, this burden has fallen on Rojava. Overall, the administration has few resources to ensure adequate protection and health care for its vulnerable populations, especially in the context of a pandemic. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the conditions they have, and they live as what happened to Denmark. What was it, the 1600s, something around there? I may have that wrong. Maybe off by a century or two. I think 1600s. The Denmark, maybe 1500s. I'm not sure. Denmark says, you know what? We're going to get rid of the whole king thing, and we're just going to be a republic. And all the other monarchies were like, you what? They literally went to war and tried to annihilate Denmark just because they were presenting an alternative model of governance, a less coercive, arguably, less coercive model of governance than the monarchical systems that would have fundamentally cut into the power structures of the citadelians of the day that derived the vast majority of their advantage in the vehicle of power known as monarchy. So the vehicle of power at the more basal, both of them were still operating under coercive enterprise governance models. So in that sense, they shared the same vehicle of power, but the king variation of that model was significantly enough different that it would have undermined the power structures that advantaged the citadelians of those kingdoms. And so it is with the Rojavans, who offer a governance model, which I won't say it's anarchy, it's not stateless, but it's certainly significantly closer towards statelessness in its truest sense than anything that any of the models around it produces. And if the Rojavans were ever allowed to thrive, if you took the foot off of the necks of the Rojavans, boy, if you did that, by the way, if Rojava was a safe place to live, listen, I would seriously consider moving to Rojava, although I wouldn't sign up to all of its particular programs, but that's okay. They would still welcome me because they don't coercively force people to sign up to all their particular programs. I would probably learn them. I wouldn't necessarily go through their schools to learn them, though. But I would still want to learn them, and I would respect their customs and ways, which I'm opposed to them, to some of the customs and ways for reasons that aren't moral, or I don't got no problem with people living out these ways, and I have no problem respecting certain customs and ways. But in general, I don't really care for feminist constructs for my own personal reasons. But I see the usefulness, and I see the consensual opportunities of many feminist constructs, so that's why I'm not critically fundamentally opposed to many feminist constructs. Almost all of the ones in America I'm opposed to, because they all have highly coercive elements to them. So Rojava's statelessness, not really. They're in that middling ground. And as a matter of fact, Murray Bookchin, he kind of won an anarchist. That was one of his reasons that he himself, Öcalan in part was attracted to Bookchin because Bookchin came from Marxist tradition, Marxist, leftist anarchist, and then went into, I mean, he's still largely classified leftist anarchist, and I think leftist anarchist, you guys would probably still pretty much claim that guy. But I kind of think of him being in a kind of a field all of his own. To me, that's why I'm attracted to him in large part. And again, I don't sign up for everything that he says. I don't agree with everything he says. But fundamentally, Murray Bookchin was telling the anarchists, listen, the reality of power is such where human beings are, at the very least, the I would refer to them as the heuristic institutions within the vast, overwhelming 99% of human beings are such, you can't go from a coercive enterprise governance model to a stateless model in any kind of practical sense of the term. It's going to take maybe a generation, 2 generations of opportunities for humans to experience consensual exchange with recurrence, for them to begin to naturally develop tendencies that more easily fit into those parameters. And so because of that, there's municipalism, which is, I think, kind of a hybrid between statelessness and the state. It's a recognition of the need for administration to manage shared resources. That it's inevitably, it's difficult to avoid the reality of power. The human beings, especially with our constructs such as we have them now, that if we're going to manage the waterways and the roadways, there is some degree of centralized administration that must occur that has some form of authority over larger land masses that these structures are on, the roads are on, or the waterways or whatever. So that's the essential call to Murray Bookchin, that the anarchists fundamentally are unrealistic in this. Now, I believe that we can get to a time where we can manage such structures outside of coercive enterprise governance modeling altogether, but I'm kind of with Murray in that maybe there's a bridging, but not a bridging that the left has traditionally offered. Their bridging to anarchy, such as that is to do it through killing. We will annihilate the bad elements, the baddies, the ones that are incapable of seeing things the way we want them to see them, the constructs, and we will operate with certainty and demand certainty. And that's another thing, by the way. A lot of Rojavans, they're, as I've seen, such as I understand them, the predilection to rest with greater comfort in uncertainty is much higher amongst this group than it is amongst, well, certainly any American faction, I'll just say. I think I'm going to end it there. This is the focus, which is also the halfway point of the show, which has been redone for you, the people, because if it's not done right for the people, Frico, you do it over again. Doesn't matter, because you're worth it. I love you. That's why I do this. Whew. Alrighty. Well, I'm just going to get right to the break here. Oh, no, I left this play. Hold on. Let me get right to the break here after I get to the... All right. Come on. Where are we at? Where are we at? Oh, I know where we got to get to. All right. Well, you know what? We'll just start here. We're not going to have this exactly right today. All right. Here we go. We're going to go on break right now. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Love overwhelmed me. Love overwhelmed me.
I took my time. I did that. I took my time. I was going for the And it didn't work. I was trying for something. It didn't work. I was trying for that dramatic, silent transition. But, no. I'm not going to do that one again. Hey, you live, you learn, you live. Let's just get right back into the show in the way that we do. Let's assure that everyone has all their ducks in a row.
Warning, the material you're about to be exposed to is organized individuals who are limited in capacity to understand the actual reality of power around them, just as you and everyone else alive on the earth. What you're about to hear are opinions, suppositions, like gospel or scientific truths, not infallible certainties. Brace yourself for incoming opinions that could confirm or deny your preferential view of the reality of power. Brace yourself for fallible material, fallible opinions, and values reflected, but nonetheless variably firmly held. We do not apologize for anyone we offend. We do not apologize for daring to express our views and impressions of what we believe is and what we hope to see. We will keep talking so long as we are able.
And now, Frico attempts to talk about the news without freaking out.
That's the plan, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I am designed to do, and we are 15 shows. 15 shows. And I was nervous because this is the second time that I've done this show, but again, because of my audio, the gremlin that I didn't realize was even possible. So now I know. Now I have to create other layers of audio protection to assure that that never happens again. That can never happen again. Not on my watch. So that's why I'm doing this over again. And in the original iteration, I was most nervous about the Rojava section. And then I was like, okay, I have to face it all over again. But I got through it with no freak out, and I feel like these next two stories, I feel like we're going to be okay. We're going to be safe. We're going to be fine. I feel like we're home free. I've even tempted to even just put up there 16 right now. But I'm not going to. Let's tell you what. Why don't we let's get to record our first segment here. Our first segment back. Ian, hold on. Just so you know, this is part of the greatness of the show, that I allow you to see. Basically, I give you the full measure of me. I give you the artifice and I give you the raw. I give you all of that. I go for the construct and the naked, all in one show. That's what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about flirting in between the factitious and the blood and bone. That's what I do here. That's why I show you all these elements. I'm a decent person. Let's get this talk feature recorded. 3, 2, 1. This is a talk feature for Frico Talks the News on Thursday, May 29th. Or, excuse me, Friday. It's Friday. Getting... You know, I made it through the first recording of this show without saying Friday. By the way, you'll never see those segments. They're lost. Already deleted. The only way that you'll see this show is if you recorded it live. Well, the one that came before this. Although I actually, the show is pretty good. It's just unwatchable because of the audio. This talk feature, though. This talk feature is in the here and now. And it is a glorious talk feature, ladies and gentlemen. This is something I could get my wheels behind. I don't know why I said that. That's not a saying. Ugh. The better than gas electric option is coming. A GM is making some pretty hefty changes as of late in the electric battery power universe. Recently, Tim Grew, the GM electric battery guy, claims that GM is working on electric batteries that will soon hit the market that can last for 1 million. Try to separate my microphone from myself when I do that. Here, let's do this. Try this. Ready? 1 million miles! 1 million miles. And pack a healthy range of 600 miles, further eroding the advantages that combustion fuel-powered engines currently have over electric ones in your face. You know, people, for a time, and who knows whether it'll last, and I know I've seen this in electric vehicles already, some have this feature, they're going to want the engine sound. They're going to want the engine sound. And they'll have it. Not saying that I would want the engine sound. And wonderful, you want the engine sound, but only you can hear it. Like outside, it's still quiet. So you'd be like, you get the sensation that you're just totally, and you're not bothering anyone. That's consensuality right there. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Here's an excerpt from cleantechnica.com. GM EVs may someday have, hold on, million mile batteries and 600 mile per hour range. Oh my gosh. Could you combine those? 600 miles per hour, 600. No, I wouldn't want that though. That would be bad. You know, it's interesting. If you're going 60 miles an hour on average, 600 mile range, you're like, yo, man, this is the bee's knees. But if you're going 600 miles an hour and the range is 600 miles, you're like, yo, dude, what? What up with that? What gives? What gives? If I'm going 600 miles an hour, I want to go at least 3,000 mile range. Otherwise, screw your plane. Take it away. Take it away and give me another lover. Anybody knows that reference, comment down below. And if you get the reference, I will give you a virtual hug. Although you should probably wear plastic baggings before you engage in the virtual hug, because I don't know if I could transfer Coronavilles virtually, but I've not seen any studies done on the issue, which is bothersome. But no studies have been done on the issue. So, back to the story. Tim Grew, head of GM's local electrification and battery. Okay, I remember. Hold on. I did a skit, and I'm going to relive it. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that after I go through this, you will understand perfectly. Oh, yeah. All right, so in the original, I went through a whole iteration of how I got to this. Freako head, global electrification systems. GES head. I'm going to get to that. Let me just give you this scenario, all right? I'm going to give you this scenario. Time to change scenes. Hold on. Let me clear myself for myself. Check out this musical part right here. It's excellent. I was just playing you about the musical part. This is just playing you. Just wanted to make sure you felt like you were getting paid attention to even when I was muting the microphone, so I didn't sort of. By the way, I did decide that in the end that I've chosen, rather than I am going to keep that clicking sound. I want to keep the clicking sound. I've chosen that. That's part of the breaking the construct of the factitious. Yeah, that's what that is. So, electrification and battery systems. So this is the scenario. Ready, ladies and gentlemen? Prepare yourselves. Going to a party. Yo, Frank! Come over here. It's my friend Darren. Yo, what's up? Oh, why Darren gotta be black now? Plenty of white Darrens. What the heck? Man, the Darren of Darrens is a white guy. Bewitched, right? Wasn't he a Darren? Anyway, Darren, what's up? As it so happened, Darren actually is a black guy, so hey, whatever. So, yo, Darren, come over here. Talk to Frank. Yo, Frank, tell Darren about your new job. 2 scenarios, ready? First scenario. Yeah, man, I'm the head of GM's global electrification and battery systems. So you an egghead? Yeah. Oh, you an egghead? Oh, you an egghead and you came to a party. You an egghead and you came to a party. What's up with that? Check this man out. Coming to a party. An egghead. Tell him what you do. Come on, go ahead. I'm a head of global electrification and battery systems. Oh, egghead. Now I'm going to give you another scenario. Now, I may be applying hubristic standards here, ladies and gentlemen. I will concede that point. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I have to have that up. I have to have this up. This is time for this to be up now. Well, this is the second scenario. Yo, Darren, what's up? Yo, you living large. You like it? You like it up in here? It's nice, nice, nice. Why you trying to talk black, though? What's up with that? Yo, man, you know how it is. No, I don't. I don't. Yo, Darren, chill. Yo, listen. Me and my friend Frank. Frank got a new job. Yo, Frank, come over here. Yo, what's up? Hey, hello. Come on. What should Frank be in this scenario? I don't know. Yo, what's up? What's up, everybody? How you doing? I'm a stereotypical Italian. You know, come on, give it up. Yo, Frank, what's up? Now Darren's suddenly Italian too. Yo, anyway, I got this new job. I'm the head of GM's global electrification system. Oh, you a superhero? You know it. I'm a superhero, baby. Global electrification. Yo, man, I kill you dead. Ain't nobody messing with Frank. See, that type of power and awe and prestige goes against everything I stand for. But I would totally sell out GM if you eliminate the battery systems part and you make this. First of all, we're going to get rid of Tim, because Tim, first of all, the fact that you took a job that had that definition and you didn't insist on it just being global electrification systems, that says a lot about you. You're not fit for the job. I am. Freako. I am fit for the job of being the head of global electrification systems for GM. The GES head. Hashtag Freako GES head now. Anyway, let's continue on in the story. He says that the Tim Tro, the man who accepted this diminished capacity. Everybody's all excited when you say electrification, and as soon as you add this, it's like, nope. He says the new factory will be manufacturing large format pouch cells that use nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminum, chemistry developed by his company. Oh, now he has some. Now he has some fortitude and in internal sense of rockness. I get it. He says adding aluminum to the mix make it possible to reduce the amount of cobalt used and contributes to longer battery life. Gru adds that GM is already pushing ahead with 0 cobalt and 0 nickel cells and experimenting with electrolyte and zeolite additives that will extend their service life even more. We do have million-mile battery life, especially in shared mobility usage in our sites, and are getting great results when it comes to that, he says. Separator technology, different current locator technology, overlithiated cathodes, dry electrode processing, and anode mixes with oxides. That is pure frickin' poetry, folks. Pure frickin' poetry. I could have easily made this the news poem. Maybe I should have, because that is some manipulations of some poetical constructs there that are unintended that could myriad myself I could write a whole series of poetry from these strings of words alone. I could do a series of I could do stuff with this. Just wonderful stuff. Anyway, you get to say that and know what all that means in your head, and yet you took this job with this diminished title? Come on, Tim! I'm going to say it again because I feel good. Separator technology, different current collector technology, overlithiated cathodes, dry electrode processing, and anodes mixed with oxides are all among the other methods the company is considering to improve fast charging while reducing costs. Wow. All of that, man. I want to work in all of that. Like layman-y, though, because I don't want to have to learn all that. It's particulars, but layman-y. I'll be the layman visionary that comes in and says, have you ever tried to blah, blah, blah? And they're like, oh my gosh, of course not. No, guy who doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. Totally. That's my dream. All right. But not that guy who doesn't know what he's talking about shouldn't talk. Because every once in a while, a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about actually does something. They're like, hey, I never thought of that. But really, the main. Probably not. Anyway, lithium metal cell technology is also ongoing with an expectation it will be production ready by 2025. We've actually had a very good spring on this technology, Grew said of the lithium metal research. We now see a very viable path with almost twice the energy density of today that will easily enable 500 to 600 mile vehicles in the future. I've lowered my voice in that because I went into shareholder mode, because I think that shareholder speak. Stock price. I'm saying stock price, by the way. I'm actually tempted to write stock price because this is largely stock price, but still, I thought it was worth noting. Either way, also worth noting, it's a good thing for me to point out here. Let me take a brief waterage here. Stock price. I follow battery tech. Battery tech is really essential to individuals and consensual associations having the capacity to define life by their choosing. If you have battery capacity, you don't even have to create the power where you're at. You can even pirate power, so to speak. Not in the strictest. I'm not talking about illegally taking power, but metaphorically, you could pirate power. You could go say if you say you have the capacity, you could show up at some place and there's a certain type of free resource that you could put your devices in that capture that power. You could build up enough power to go back home, and you got enough power to power your situation for 3 months, something like that. You set up for a week and you harvest the power, and then you go home and you're good for 3 months. So maybe once every 3 months or so, you guys go for a trip and you just set up. And, you could see things like that happening. There's all kinds of ways that we could manage the distribution of power in ways that would enable more and more individuals and consensual associations to of all kinds of, in this case, in the sense of power being energy, that allows our energy influences our tools that are designed to be influenced by energy to be able to act in the first place. Primary movers of action for many of our implementations that we currently rely on. So really demonstrable power in the really truest sense of the term. So this energy that we can literally have this type of demonstrable power distributed in a lot of innovative ways that we can't even imagine, the more that we can develop batteries that can maximize the power that they take in and can store greater and greater capacities in smaller and smaller transferable spaces. So we could set up our stuff with our battery packs and power them out the gigaloopas and then go home and whatnot. So we could have situations where we could set up our devices even in our homes. We only have to have them set up for a period maximized times. When it's maximal, we deploy. We don't have to have our devices deployed year in and year out, so we don't have to have these ugly eyesores. And imagine windmills that you'd only put up when you have high wind, where you're going to capture massive amounts of power, but you have the capacity to capture it and build up legacy storage. So you don't. Then when you don't need it, you can take it down and not have it up there all the time. You could do things like that. So battery power is really one of those essential technologies when it comes to what I call steward enabling technologies. So it's one of those things that is on my radar constantly. I'm constantly looking for new battery news, and I bring that to you, the people. That's what I do here. Coming up next is the last segment of the show, is the news poem. I'm just going to press stop now. Oh, I didn't transfer to this last scene, but that's okay in this case. I'm fine with that. Well, that looks like, to me at least, subjectively speaking. Now I'm going to make the habit here, even though right now I do not at all need to do this because I got nobody really watching. Well, I mean, I got a couple of people watching, but nobody really responded. So, but I'm just going to make this the habit. This is where I would look and I would see if I got any chats or whatever. And so if you are watching live and you're not responding, and that's fine if you're not, this is when I will select it between the recording of the segments. During the segments, though, I don't check the chats because the segments I'm recording, well, yeah, they're standalones in and of themselves. So I don't interrupt them with the chats. So this is when I plan on doing the chats. So I'm going to start to build this regular habit, even amongst the few that are watching early on. This habit of, okay, this is when I do the chats. So there you go. Build those habits, build those heuristic institutions within your audience. That's what you do. That's what we're all do. We're all trying to build heuristic institutions within our audience, in essence. So with that, let's get to our last segment, which is our news poem. I didn't hit the transition here. There we go. Here's the look at that, 15 shows, and I have no reason to think I'm not going to make it. Let's get this last segment recorded. In 3, 2, 1. And this is a news poem for Frico Talks the News on Friday, May 29th, 2020. I am Frico with Frico.com, and our news poem today is Tibetan Chickens and the Genetic Plastic of Ancestral Homes. This is, well, it's quite fascinating. News first, poem follows. This is an excerpt from Science Blog. Genetic memory of ancestral environments helps organisms readapt. The chicken was domesticated from the red jungle fowl in South Asia and Southeast Asia at least 4,000 to 4,500 years ago. It was brought to the Tibetan plateau by about 1,200 years ago, where it acquired high-altitude adaptations, such as an increase in oxygen-carrying red blood cells. That would make sense, because you need more oxygen when you have less, more capacity basically for your red blood cells to receive the oxygen that's available, to capture what's available, and you have less available in general, which you would at higher levels. In a set of experiments by University of Michigan biologists and their Chinese colleagues, researchers hatched and reared hundreds of chickens on the Tibetan plateau at an elevation of nearly 11,000 feet, and at an adjacent lowland site in China's Sichuan province. Some of the eggs from lowland chickens were hatched from the plateau, and some high-altitude eggs were hatched at a site 2,200 feet above sea level. The goal was to assess the relative contributions of two types of phenotypic change, meaning changes to an organism's observable physical characteristics or traits, to the process of environmental adaptation. So these are, now they're going to talk about the two types. So in one type you have plastic phenotype changes involve altered gene activity, but no rewriting of genetic code. So it can produce a biological difference, but not in a way that will necessarily transfer in the hardwired code from one generation to the next. That's in essence what we're talking about. While mutations, I hate this word, mutations. Mutation is basically an assumption of value right from the start, because certainly among Western humans on the most part, that mutation has a connotation of negativity. And I'm not being SJW and politically correct. I believe that this is one of the inherent problems of current science today, is that it has these types of value assumptions built in. An assumption of finding the right human, for instance. The right human is not mutated, for instance. Mutations are just deviations, variations from the script, if you will. That's what we're talking about. Not mutations, variations from the aggregate, really. And some variations are with some more or less degrees of regularity than others. Some are more rare than others, but they're simply variations of the script. There's no inherent value to the variation whatsoever, outside of the usefulness of that variation to enable the individual with the variation to fulfill their own preferences. And if it's a significant impediment to that, then it's a variation that within their framework of preference is ultimately negative. But many variations might very well offer the individual various places and times, because there's other circumstances involved. It's like an individual with some variation that requires more intense resource being put in, less intense resource contributing to the overall. In times when individuals don't have the capacity to take on such responsibilities, they wouldn't do very well. But in other times you may, like for instance, folks that have Down syndrome in previous universes, the capacity for individuals maybe to take care of these folks might not be realistic. But so that might be a variation of the human species that you could say is a mutation. Fundamentally denied them their ability to be able to satisfy the preferences, in a large part because they couldn't provide for themselves. And because others either couldn't or wouldn't do it, then they suffered. But in our times such as we have them now, there's many structures in the world today that can support such individuals. And we may find out that in circumstances in which these individuals may have, there may be what you may find is, if you allow these individuals to become, and you give them a lot more freedom than we give them now, I would assume, that these folks that have this Down syndrome, that there may be advantages, there may be even overall advantages to the human organism, to these individuals having the capacity to interact with us, that what we provide for them might very well, in the end, they will be providing for themselves. We will just identify the service that they provide to the whole that makes it valuable for us to assure that even if they can't fully master the disciplines to provide for themselves like most humans can in our current times, they can still provide for themselves in how their interactions with others benefit the whole. And we'll find roles and functions, and we're already finding roles and functions for folks that, that there's my little tirade about that whole mutation thing. But here's an excellent example related to a segment that I did earlier in the show, talking about some of the flaws inherent in science today, and they have such assumptions of universal value built into their structures that they allege to be based in objectivity, and it's not. When you use a word like mutation, it's not about people's feels. I don't care about your feelings. I do care about building in these assumptions of value and turning scientists into correct seekers rather than seekers of what is, and stop trying for the correct. There is no correct. There is no ideal, best, mutant-free human. Humanity is variegated in its degrees of deviations, if you will, from scripts in all manners of forms. And very few of us that fully, neatly even could ever fit into a capacity that you could say is mutation-free. So, end the word mutation in science. People that use it, whatever, I don't care. And it's not a moralistic thing, it's a practical concern. It's a practical concern that you keep building into your tests and studies and models an assumption of a potential to discover best human. You can't. There's no such thing. In the chicken study, researchers were specifically interested in how organisms readapt when reintroduced to ancestral environments. They found that plastic changes play a more prominent role when organisms return to an ancestral home than when they adapt to new environments. These findings reveal a mechanism by which past experience affects future evolution, said Jinzhi Zhang, the study's senior author and a professor at the UN Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. Our findings contribute to the recent debate on the relative role of plastic in genetic changes and adaptation, and reveal the importance of considering whether the environment is changing to a novel or ancestral one. And essentially, I'll just give you I'll bring it to an end here. Essentially, the studies found that there seems to be some degree of residual memory of what was as far as the genetic code, and an ability in a plastic sense to reintroduce those physical characteristics to the organism when it is placed in the same conditions that it, you use the word remember, I'll say their word remembers from before. So it doesn't, though, revert back in terms of its hard code. So it allows for the elasticity to consider that it might not stay. I don't know if you would. Basically, it has an elasticity. Really, what it is. If you want to, I went down the road of what scientists do, which I think they need to stop. I keep trying to interpret meaning and design into the patterns. They're not necessarily, well, anyway. So essentially the pattern, the observable pattern, is that there seems to be significant evidence to suggest there's some form of residual memory, for lack of a better term, of the condition of what was, and that when the organism returns to that condition, that it can immediately adapt to that condition, but it does not immediately change its hard code. It only changes the surface level structure, if you will, to put it in simplistic terms. So what I would like to see is, if you leave them in that condition, how quickly before it starts to rewrite the, if you will, the hard code. So now it starts to pass that on. And then if you then take that generation and move it back down, do they then have that other reverse kind of recurring, I'm sure they do, a recurring plastic memory. Now what they found was, the reason that they found that they think the hard code is when you put them up, when you have the eggs up here, they quickly turn into the new condition. Yeah, that's it. Hold on. Let me just make sure I got this right. The egg results suggest that adaptive mutational changes are needed when an organism is brought to an unfamiliar environment for the first time, while plastic changes will do the trick when those same creatures return to an ancestral home. So when you come into a new condition that the organism has not felt before, it's going to be a long time before you start to see the types of changes that would be better suited for that particular environment. Well, odds would say the general rate of variational scripting, if you will, the success rate, I don't know what the success rate would be. So most of the variational scriptings will produce negative results as far as being able to satisfy preference. While plastic change will do the trick when those same creatures, so the real rub for me, the real net result is that there is, for lack of a better term, some degree of genetic memory that organisms are able to call upon if the conditions return to what they remembered from before. So now let's do the poem part of the news poem. Tibetan chickens and the genetic plastic of ancestral homes. Transcriptomes conserved from bacteria to vertebrates. Pause, red jungle fowl. The experiment is the design. The flaw is the way in which the genetics reach back into the dead ends of past hearts. Environmental adaptation. Letters in the code. In the chicken study, the mimetic is the answer to the flow. Lowland site in China, excerpt. The design is the molecular calling card of the great I started you here. Egg hatchability, high altitude adaptations, plastic phenotypic changes, Incubated in the lowland, like a river felled from the dead sky's bone, the molecular march to all considers the past a new form of bone. Relative rolls of plastic, fraction of fertilized, set of experiments. Researchers hatched and reared. The song goes like this: do not remember the eggs that cracked on the plains of Tibet, but rather remember the low stars that ate our hearts and turned us into penned Fragonardian fowls. High-altitude eggs, the funambulistic nature of the perilous affair, existential heights remembered in the broken protein S at the bottom of the eggshell cup, affects future evolution, fizzled, resolved, phenotypic change, organisms observable physical, the mimetic undercurrent, letting go of the perfect yolks inevitable, undone, broken into the atmosphere, winged across the peaks of mountains that hem in the Tibetan plains of the processional poultry. Tibetan chicken eggs, increase in oxygen carrying red blood cells, carrying on metaphorical mountain trails choked by rocked boundaries, involve altered gene activity, frozen, sure, but then DNA molecules, while mutations, the conversations we have with the beginning and end of the model's potential ranges, ancestral environments, plastic changes play, organisms return to an ancestral home. The Tibetan plains dotted with cotton chicken puffs, resynced in egg, in song. Lowland eggs were incubated, the heat, the protection, the moan of the mountains at night as wolves chase their potential life across broken paths. No rewriting of the genetic code. Unfamiliar Tibetan plateau. Plastic changes will do the trick. The tip of the potential design. Chickens on the Tibetan plateau. Well, my voice is definitely getting dried out, and that'll happen when you do two shows because you screwed the one up, and you only blame yourself. I blame myself, well, not too harshly, but it wasn't like an obvious screw up, so on the scale of blaming myself, rather low. But I take full responsibility for the failures of my actions. But this show, hopefully, salute. We have made. Sorry. We are the Hello Kitties of the world, metaphorically. Sponsor of the show, not really. And with that, that is the end of this news poem. I will see you on Monday. Monday will be the greatest podcast that you have ever seen, or ever heard, or ever witnessed in any way, shape, or form. Don't miss it. Everything has come to this point. Everything. Everything about your life has led you to Monday's show. Cool thing is, they didn't put any pressure on me. No pressure at all, because that's not what we're about here on Frico Talks the News. We're about lay back and chill. We don't make claims of certainty, absurdness. We're not egotistical. We don't need to be the best. We just are the best. We just are. Blink, blink. All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for joining Frico Talks the News. Wow, this transition, I don't have any music for this one. Oh, there we go. There we go. I don't like not having music. I like music. In the end, I decided the music is for me, not you. So with that, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if I said anything to offend you or make you feel unwanted, unloved, unwelcome in any way, shape, or form, even if my ideas are anathema to yours, I want you to know we can still be friends as long as we frame everything within Bill of Rights parameters. You can do you and I can do me. And we can coexist. We can figure this stuff out. We can make bread together. We don't have to like each other to respect our Bills of Rights elements with one another and be able to make bread together. And so with that spirit, I've created this just for you.
Thank you for engaging with this material presented. As usual, remember your views, your suppositions do not make you subhuman, nor do they permit you to subhumanize others. No humans were harmed in the making of the show, and we extend no wish of harm to anyone who wasn't directly harmed or threatened to harm others first, no matter how reprehensible we find your views.
We will see you in the next Frico Talks, where Frico attempts to talk about news without freaking out.
It's